Hi, everyone. We're just going to give it a minute for people to join us here on the Zoom, and then I'll do some introductions and we'll get going on our successful photography Zoom panel today. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get started. I just want to do some introductions first. So welcome to View. I'm Kelsey Lynn Mayo. I'm the exhibition manager here at View. And I am seeing a lot of the photos that come in for jury selection. I also have experience taking my own photography of my sculpture. And I've had years of experience of helping other people with their photography and how to have a successful photo for applications. Joining us tonight is Travis Kiefer, who is our marketing manager and also responsible for photography at View, anything from live events to helping photograph artwork. He has several years of experience at View, seeing what comes in and how to fix the photos and how to edit them. So he's going to be our key person tonight, talking us through tips and tricks of how to make sure you have a successful photo.
All right, my turn. Okay, so welcome everybody. Like Kelsey said, my name is Travis Kiefer. And so one of the things that I want to do tonight, when it comes to taking photos, everyone kind of thinks that this is how you take great photos. This is a great tool in a lot of situations. This is wonderful. Sports, weddings, portraits. This lens, I mean, $1,000 cameras work fantastic. For shooting around your house, family, friends, functions, stuff like that, and art, this is really all you need. Any phone that's been made in the last, I'd say, 6 years is going to give you absolutely everything you need to take great photos. So in this class today, we are going to use an iPhone. This one is a 14. Any smartphone really does the same thing. But we are going to show that you can take great photos with just this and some things that you have around your house. So one of the first things, I should preface this also. Like Kelsey said, I have helped put a lot of photos of people's artwork up on our website in promotional materials, stuff like that. So I've gone through a lot of photographs over the years, and some of the problems that I see with them happen over and over. So we kind of broke down what those most common problems are, most common issues that we see. And those are kind of what we're going to focus on tonight and how to avoid them. So one of the first things anybody can do when they're taking photos of their artwork is shoot next to giant windows. Giant windows are fantastic. They let in lots of ambient light. It helps when the sun is out. In this case, because it's a little later in the day, we have a simulated sun out there that's shining through, but it's working just the same as the big ball in the sky. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to a lot of this, we're going to be using my phone, so you kind of get to see what I'm looking at through the viewfinder. So once we get going, there we are.
And I just wanted to mention as well, Travis, if anyone has questions as we're going along, feel free to pop them in the Q&A and I'll see them and monitor them and we'll bring them up because this is definitely a learning experience and we want to make sure you get everything possible from this. Thank you.
Yeah. And please ask questions. All questions are always great. All right, so when you're shooting artwork, the reason why we like this big window here is because if you look, I'm going to use my hand here. We get even lighting across the face of this. So we get some highlights on here. We get some shadows on the opposite side, on the indents. But when you take that in conjunction with everything else, and you take that photo, I mean, you get a really, really nice contrast coming across. And then with a little cropping, you know, that right there is a fantastic picture that if anybody sees, if they're judging or on Instagram or anything, that's going to draw their attention automatically. And it really is just as easy as going near a window. One thing that you always want to make sure that you're not doing, don't get in the way of your light source and your object. That's going to cast shadows. That's going to cause lots of problems. So with this, oh, sorry, I forgot one important thing. So when you're shooting art, there is one important setting to turn on either of your phones. And I did check. I'm using an iPhone. Androids have the same functions. I checked with a coworker today to make sure that I wasn't going to talk to just half the audience if only half of us have Apple products, but it should be universal. You might find these in different places on your phone, but they should all have it. So if you go to your settings app and go to your camera, one of the most important things that you can do is turn on your grid. Whenever you're shooting art, that gives you a nice clean line on an edge. And that really helps as you go along to line things up. When you're taking normal photos, it also helps. So you can leave it on, but just in your composition part here, just turn that grid on and it will make your life a lot easier. So if we go back to this photo here, all right, so you can tell the object itself looks great, but it is a little busy in the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this for a minute, and we're going to create a quick backdrop with stuff that most people will have lying around their house that is going to help clean up the background and keep things a little more interesting or focused on the piece. So essentially all I have here is a thin piece of wood. This could be a yardstick if you had one, or just really anything that a broom handle, anything really works. I have just a plain black tablecloth here. I have a hanger, and I have some C47 clips, which sound fancy. That is a movie industry term for a simple clothespin. That's something, it's one of my favorite stories about the movie industry. Supposedly, clothespins are used all over the place on a movie set, especially back in the day. And movie executives were upset that the movie studios were spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on clothespins, and they didn't understand it. And so they refused to buy clothespins anymore. So what they did instead was they just came up with a code, and they started calling them C47s. And the executives didn't want to sound dumb by not knowing something. So they just said, oh yeah, of course, we need those. And so that's kind of how they got around everything. But so all I did is I took this yardstick, one simple fold under the tablecloth, clip that down on either end. So it gives you a nice wide base at the top. Then you take your clothes hanger and kind of just stick it right in the middle. Take two more and clip the clothes hanger to your yardstick. And right here, I have an easel. anything that's taller than a table or something will work. We're an art center, so we have lots of easels, so that's just why I grabbed that. But so now we have a backdrop, and what you can do is you take the front end of this, and you just kind of pull it tight, and you just want a nice even curve as it goes back. Ideally, this would be steamed just to make it a little cleaner, but for these purposes, I think it works. But this way, when you shoot anything, you're not going to see, there won't be any differentiation between your ground, where your piece is sitting, and the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a bust of, hang on, I know her name. Her name is Betsy.
And another trick, if you don't have a tablecloth around, is if you have a wide piece of paper, you can also put that down kind of in a similar fashion, swoop down and then tape to the wall. So I know a lot of artists have like large format paper to do sketches on. That works as well, and that can be even cleaner if you have like a really sleek sculpture, because then there's no wrinkles and then you don't have to worry about steaming. But either way works. You can just use what you have, and you don't need that easel behind there. You could just put a nail in the wall and have the clothes hanger hanging up.
Or you have a friend, significant other, somebody who can just hold something.
Somebody that really loves you and will hold that hanger.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not hard work. Hopefully they're strong enough to hold up a tablecloth, but you should be able to do this quickly to get what you need. All right, so we're going to go back into my phone here. All right, so now all of a sudden, we'll try to clean this up a little bit as we go. Again, we got nice even light coming in. So if you take this picture, just imagine wrinkle-free. But you have a lot, looking at this first picture, there's a lot less action going on. It's more focused on the sculpture. Another thing we can do is we're going to get just a little light. Let me get out of here just to show you. All right, I think this was a $15 light at Target. And all we're going to do, we're just going to show the importance of light. So with just one light shining right on this little Betsy, there's a setting we can use in our iPhone apps. And what it's going to do is it's going to drop your exposure in real time. Like you may have noticed, we haven't edited anything yet. We're going to get to that. But this is one easy thing that we can do. All right, so to do this, you just click, wait for that yellow square with that sun, and you can go up or down. And what that's going to do is that's going to let less or more light into your lens.
And Travis, you're just holding over that little yellow sun and dragging it, correct?
Correct. Yep. You just tap that screen and then drag it down.
Right.
So this is going to give you a lot more contrast. And so we're going to do this one. We're going to do a quick little edit just to show the difference. So we take it like that, snap a quick photo. Then we're going to open it up in our editing. We can bring that exposure up. So what exposure is going to do is that's going to add artificially, and if you're doing it in post, a little more light to your piece. So we went a little too far in the main part. So we're going to bring that up a little bit. And then we're going to go to our contrast, and that's going to separate the lights from the darks in the piece. So we'll just bring that up slightly. And then we'll go to the black point, and the black point is literally just how dark your black is going to be. So we'll bring that down a little bit. Again, you never want to do too much here. So we'll go about 3. Well, maybe we'll go 3. It doesn't want to go 3. All right. So once we do that, and give it a little crop. And here's one thing I would mention to a lot of people. Don't be afraid to crop your work. I know it's hard to do that when you put so much work into it. I'm not saying crop it drastically, but if you're cutting an edge off, it does make things look better sometimes.
And
So
also
with
remember, you can have different shots when you are submitting your portfolio. You can have like closer images, and that really helps the juror understand the piece more rather than a really far back shot, because you might be missing these like beautiful little sculpted details on her cheek or her nose there. And Travis, I had a couple questions I'm just gonna shoot out you real quick.
yeah.
We have, how are you getting the depth of field? Is your camera on manual settings or audio?
Yeah, so everything with the iPhone, we're letting it do its business. We are not adjusting any actual settings. Because part of the reason why is because we want to make this as simple as possible for everybody. And this phone is very smart. When it comes to taking pictures, it really knows what it's doing. If I was really worried about white balance and focus and depth of field, I would go to the big camera, where you have a lot more control in that. There's apps you can get that give you more control of that stuff in here. For the purposes of shooting things like this, you really don't need them. And all it really is going to do is complicate things.
Okay, the next question was, I want to shoot 3D ceramic pieces and would like to show the dimensions using a measured grid behind the piece. Any suggestions for minimizing the parallax error?
Ooh. Yeah, that's a tough one. What I would say is get everything as level as possible, as even as possible. So if you're shooting a ruler up or a vertical ruler, try to get yourself and the camera as square as possible to that. That helps vertically. If you're going kind of across the tabletop, that makes it a little more tricky. There's some, I don't know if I have any great advice for that, because you can skew it in the cropping settings, but that's going to skew your piece a little bit, so that might not be that helpful. The more parallel you can get, or the more perpendicular you can get to your piece, that's always going to help give it its true dimensions. So I would say get as center, both vertically and horizontally as possible, and try to keep your camera, whether it's your phone or a digital camera, as perpendicular to whatever your surface is as possible.
Great. And a couple more before we move on. Someone just asked if it's a special light bulb, which it's not. It's just a normal light bulb you can get in anywhere. It's like at Home Depot or Target.
I got this one at Ace.
Ace Hardware right there in Old Forge.
Yeah, 9.5 volt or 9.5 watt. Sorry, it's just an LED. They don't need to be special. I would recommend getting a warm bulb versus a cold bulb, just because the white is not as true. You kind of want everything to look like the sun is kind of hitting it. It looks a little more natural, looks a little warmer. Now, if you have a piece that has a lot of blues, something that you want to feel a little colder, a little less, colder, I guess.
But also when you're viewing,
a little darker.
When you're
Go
viewing
ahead.
artwork as well, it's in person, it's always going to be under that warm natural light, and the gallery lights mimic that. So you really want to shoot true to how it's going to look for when it's potentially in the gallery.
That's true. I guess I was thinking more like if you're posting something on social media or something like that, you're putting it on your website and you want that feel, that colder feel, that's a good way to do it, is just get a nice white bulb.
Oh yeah,
It's just,
definitely.
it's going to feel a little more rigid and cold. So
There is one question I asked about the background. They have a nice pastel wall available. Can you use that for the background for hanging pieces? We're gonna get to hanging pieces momentarily, so we'll let Travis wrap up here and then we'll move on to that.
yeah, just on that, as I kind of get ready to move. And I just wanted to show, kind of just the before and after here. So this is the piece with even lighting. And that is just same piece, same position, 2 quick settings adjustments. And so I just want to emphasize this, that, the phone on, or the camera on your phone is very capable of doing a lot of cool things. So that's all I wanted to point out before I move. So let me get out of here so you don't have to watch my phone bounce up and down as we move down the hallway.
It's like a roller coaster to the hallway.
Yeah. Hang on, let me turn this camera off too. We don't need anyone getting sick here.
Great.
All right.
So while Travis moves, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of a good photo on your application. As I've been on during selections, and I speak with the jurors here at View about what their thoughts were after they choose. And a lot of times the make and break point will be the quality of the photo. It might not, it may not actually come down to the fact that it could be the most beautiful piece in person, but if your photo isn't reflecting that, they're never going to know that. So these tips of improving the photos can be what actually gets you into an exhibition. And as Travis said, we've seen some things come in and it's like, oh, this person needs to sign up for the Zoom panel and and really learn some things. And don't feel free to go on YouTube, look up videos. This for example will be on YouTube later, of how to just do some slight modifications. There's a lot of information out there, so just taking that little extra time in your application process. It's not all about filling out the form, it's also having that beautiful photo.
Yeah, and I will say we have seen some submissions that, we, depending on the show, either they get in, they don't get in. Things that we get in for C80K, they'll send a photo of what it is, and we'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is coming in. And then we see it in person and it is night and day. And so there is a lot of power in the photo. And so if you're actually submitting to a place and spending money to have somebody look at it to try to see if you want, or if they want you in the show, a good photo is going to be extremely helpful.
Yeah, I definitely concur.
All right, so a couple other little things that don't really have to do with the photo yet, but I'm just looking at my notes and forgot to mention them. So I don't know if everybody knows this, but at least on iPhones, your volume buttons, that actually triggers the shutter on your camera. So you can actually shoot much more like a regular traditional camera just by the top. It's really helpful if you're shooting one-handed, so you don't have to try to get that other, or you're not doing this trying to get your thumb on the shutter button. So that's just a cool tip that I don't think everybody knows about, that everyone should, because it's great. And the other thing that I was going to mention Here, let me share my screen again.
And I do see we have some questions, but they are going to be answered shortly. So I'm going to let Travis move on to shooting two-dimensional work on the wall. And then if there's still anything unanswered, I will answer your questions. Thank you.
All right, so the other big thing is right down here, you got the 0.5, the 1, and the 3. Whenever you're shooting photos like this, where you want everything to be as nice as possible, really avoid doing the pinch and zoom. And there's a very particular reason why. So the way that these cameras work, well, for a lensed camera, when you change the focus, you're actually moving glass within the lens. So that helps keep everything nice and sharp as you go. The way cell phones work, they have 3 lenses that are stationary. So one lens is set at 0.5 zoom, one is set at 1, the 1, and one is set at 3 times zoom. Anything in between those 3, it's called a digital zoom. So what it's doing is just zooming in on one of the lenses to try to get as close as possible to the picture. Now, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it also will inevitably introduce noise to your photo, and noise is rarely good. It's just distortions in the pixels that you're creating. So if you can avoid that at all costs, stick with the 0.5, the 1, or the 3 as much as you can for shooting stuff like this. If you're out in the wild and you have friends doing something, or your kids are running around, pinch zoom all you want. It's going to be fine, but for this kind of thing, you want to use the actual lenses. All right, so we're going into 2D work here. So this first one, it is let's see, we got alcohol ink, acrylic paint, gold leaf, but it is unframed or it's not behind glass. So that's always much easier to do. So here is where the grid kind of really comes into play. So I don't know if you can see the grid very well on here, but I'll go into 3. So what you want to do is use that grid to kind of line up your piece. It doesn't have to be perfect. But like I was saying earlier, to avoid parallax, you kind of want to be as vertically and horizontally centered as possible. And you want to make sure that your phone is actually squared with the painting as best as you can. So we'll just snap this photo. Okay. So we got the frame in there. It's a little skewed. That's all right though. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by going into our crop tool. And we're just going to bring this crop in.
And as Travis, your screen.
Oh, I lost it.
Yep.
Yep.
As he's fixing that, someone asked about, do you include the frame in the photo? Yes, do include the frame in the photo because it's part of how it looks. It's part of what is being presented. And when you are sending in those dimensions, include the frame size. Some galleries will ask for unframed and frame size, but if it doesn't, include the frame size because it lets the curator know what's coming in. Because if you have a huge frame on it that's 5 inches on each side or something, that's going to change the dimension of the work. So yeah, just make sure you keep those frames in there because you put a lot of thought into what that frame is going to be, how it's going to complement the painting or print. So consider it and put it in the photo.
Yeah, that's a question much better asked to a curator than me, because my feeling is always no. Who cares about the frame? But when it's going into a show, it's much more important. Hang on, I lost you again.
That's okay. Someone also asked what common issues we see in photographs that are submitted and what are our biggest pet peeves. I'd say mine is having it be really out of skew. You really
Yeah.
can't get an idea of what it looks like because the dimensions become off. And, you know, maybe if it's a portrait, you're maybe not getting a good idea of, oh, they actually do know perspective because it is changing perspective. So that would be
Yeah.
biggest one.
And
And
actually, let me stop you right there, Kelsey,
yep,
because that's one of the things that we're about to talk about. All right, so in this piece, you can tell that, you know, just looking by the crop, because the crop is going to be perfectly square every time. So you can tell that it's slightly off, up at the top left and the bottom, or yeah, the bottom left, you know, there's a gap there. So the nice thing about that is in, you know, basic iPhone editing tools, you have these skew tools. So you can go to a horizontal skew and you can kind of bring these up and square them up if you need to. So the bottom is going to pull the vertical skew, which is this one in the middle. Hang on, this one. That's going to pull the top or the bottom either forward or backwards, basically. I'm going to try to explain these in very simple terms so they make sense to everybody. So we can square up that bottom and the top a little bit. The horizontal skew just kind of tilts it left or right. So with a couple quick little movements, it's a little more square. So we're looking a little better now. And then the other thing I would do to this is you want to kind of set it next to your painting and see what the differences are. Because ultimately, what we shoot here is going to be slightly off. It won't be exactly like anything that we're seeing in person. So there's a few main tools that we can use to fix those. One is exposure, and that's going to, I think I mentioned this already, bring a little more light into the painting or into the photo that you took. Brightness, that is going to, so in photography, there's something called a histogram, and it's basically all the colors in the image in kind of a bell curve. So on the left side is your darks, on the right side is your whites, and then everything else in the middle is your midtone. And so when you go to brighten something, either take it up or down, all you're doing is taking that all those midtones and everything else and shifting it to one side or the other. So it's going to proportionally move everything brighter or darker. Your exposure is going to focus on the light that's in the piece. So your whites and your higher level lighter colors are going to get brighter. Your darks will pretty much stay the same. So depending on what you want to do, they're similar until they're not, if that makes sense. So in most paintings like this, you know, adjust the exposure a little bit. I would adjust, you know, take a look at the brightness to see. Now, if you can tell, all these are very subtle. You never want to overdo it because then you're actually changing the work. So if we went all the way up, you know, we're fading it out if we go too far, and we're making it way darker if we go too far the other way. So kind of just go back and forth looking at that piece in general or on the wall and what it's looking like on the screen. And, you know, that's a good way to kind of tell where you're at. But then you're done and you have a nice cropped piece. I cropped it a little too close on the bottom here. but I would say that's pretty darn close to what it is on the wall.
And you're obviously doing this very quickly. When you're at
Yeah.
home, you can take more time and consideration. And
Yeah.
Travis, can you just show how you got to that setting really quick again? These editing?
Yeah. Okay. So if you go into, I'll start from the top, photos, and just click on whatever photo you want to go to or work on. And then up here in the right, the edit button. And that takes you to your adjustment tools. This little dial at the bottom, there's a little yellow dot that shows you where you're actually at. This has a lot of your color adjustment tools. This middle one has a bunch of presets that you can really go crazy with. If you're trying to create your own work or picture or photograph your own work, probably don't want to use those. And then this crop tool on the right, that gives you the ability to crop the whole picture and then skew your cropping choices.
And that's
Your
what
skew
you
choices.
are wanting to use for your zoom in, rather than doing it by pinching your phone. It's that crop tool that's going to do the zoom.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So another pet peeve that I see a lot, and it'll take us to our next piece over here. If I can set this up so you can see me. All right. It is. Oh, I lost again. Reflections. And this is mostly with, glassed pictures, paintings. It's, light and glass do not go together unless you get the fancy glareless glass, which costs an absurd amount of money, I think. Kelsey, you might know
Yes.
better about that.
Yeah, the glareless glass is used in museums a lot, but also museums have the money to be putting that type of glass into it. You at home, like starting off, or even on a kind of intermediate level as an artist, or early career professionals still don't have that money to buy that glass. It's totally okay to still be using the same like float glass. That's fine. It's just when you're documenting it is when it matters to keep those reflections out. If it's in the gallery like that, it is okay. But Travis is going to show you some tips of how to get rid of those big shining glares, because for me, that is also super distracting. And it makes me think, oh, this person maybe didn't like care enough to try to shoot it without the glare, or maybe they didn't even consider it and it was last minute or something. So making sure those big glares or shadows from yourself in the glass are not in the piece is important.
Yeah, and I also know that some people, they get it professionally framed and they don't think about, oh yeah, I need to take a picture of this first. And so at that point, it's too expensive to take it apart, or it's too hard to take apart. And so they take a picture, you can see their smiling faces in it, and it takes away from the piece as a whole. So in this case, I think you can see me. I can see myself, but there's all sorts of issues with this. And this tip also works if you're in a gallery taking photos of other people's work that you really like. There's a very easy way to avoid this shot where you can see the camera, you can see the person. Here, this is a little better. Now you can see me, I think.
Mhm.
And so literally all you have to do is step off to the side. And just kind of hold your phone out. Try to square it up as best as possible. And then take the picture. I took two there, but and then just figure everything else out in post, as we say. So you get that picture, right there, doesn't look great. It's far away and everything else, but if you come back in, and this is where I'm going to break with Kelsey a little bit and say, let's say we're not submitting this to a show. We just want a nice picture of it. I'm going to crop the frame out. So we do that right away. It looks a little better, but it's clearly distorted. So what we do, we come in here, horizontal skew, kind of just turn that back out. We can rotate this frame, this crop a little bit. And here you can, it's really good to work with the grid lines to try to figure out where you're at. But then kind of just go back and forth until you're more or less squared with everything. And again, these aren't going to be perfect necessarily. We just want to get them pretty good. If you went into a program like Photoshop, you can do a lot more fine tuning. It's a lot easier to handle this kind of thing. But with this in, I don't know, 30 seconds a minute, you know, we're looking a little better than we were. So what I would do with this, so it's more or less square. Because there's so much black on here, here's one of the things about phones. I don't think your black is ever going to be as black as it is in person. So that's why this black point adjustment, this works really well. And again, you don't want to go over, you know, you don't want to overdo it too much, but just bring a little more black into that photo. Just to make it pop. And then usually I just kind of grab the brightness a little bit and bring everything up. Again, all that's doing is taking all of the colors in the image, proportionally moving them slightly one side or the other. A little darker, a little brighter. So this photo went from that to this in a minute.
Travis, I have a question. Someone was wondering if you can do this skewing with standard cameras.
Yes, sort of. You can, not in camera though. At least I don't think you can do it in camera.
Yeah, I think the best way to explain it is your phone is almost being the camera and the editing tool at the same time. Your camera, on the other hand, you'd have to take the photo and then go into your preview on your Mac or something akin to that and use that editing tool. And the standard one that comes with your computer will be able to do the same as your phone.
Correct.
So you don't need to spend, you know, $60 a month or whatever for Adobe. You can use these editing tools on your camera or the ones that pre-exist on your computer.
Yeah, so there's a myth.
Your phone. Yeah.
I will say I use Photoshop for everything. When it comes to photo editing, I think a lot of people like me say you have to use Photoshop because we feel better about it. We feel more professional by saying, oh yeah, you need all these fancy tools to do the simple thing that our phones can do in no time. So it's kind of self preservation for people who have spent years learning certain programs and they just don't want to give it up. So I would say that's kind of the big thing. So I'm going to leave you for 2 seconds. I got to go grab our backdrop that we bought or that we made earlier. So I will be back in a jiff.
So yeah, the thing with Photoshop as well is there's ways around using it. It's not necessary to all purposes of photographing work. And just remember, you don't have to go overboard, but you know, do get to a good standard level. And that is what you're trying to achieve. And the other thing as well, somebody was talking about pet peeves. It's not that we're looking for every image to be taken by a professional photographer. We're just trying to have a consistent image or kind of reached a standard that is something that we understand the piece. And Travis, I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay. So this last one that we're going to talk about. So I was looking for a nice reflection earlier today, and this happens sometimes, mostly with, oops, sorry, I didn't realize I'm shaking this so bad. This happens a lot with photos under glass because of the reflexive material of the film or the paper. So when you get glossy on glossy, you create this thing that is the impossible image to shoot without being seen. So here you can see me. If we do the trick that we just did, you see all those paintings in the background. So really, it seems like there's no good way to do this. There's no way to get this so we can get an image of just this very handsome owl. So one thing we can do, there is a way. I'm going to set you down for 2 seconds as I move our backdrop again and get this into place. And we're just going to move this up. So this is another thing. You have a loved one who works for cheap. You can kind of get them on board to do this. Oh, that's a great shot. All right. So all we did, that's our little backdrop. It's on the easel still. We put the easel up kind of as far as it'll go, which is great. Because the nice thing about reflections is you don't have to worry about where the light is coming from. You need to worry about where the light is bouncing to. So that's where you're going to see it. So by putting the backdrop here, all of a sudden we blocked off half of those reflections that we were getting before. So now, let's see if we can do this. We can, stand off to the side again. You can still see my little fingers, but that's all right. We can fix that with the skew. So we take a little photo there. Take a couple just in case. And then we'll go back into our cropping tool. And we'll start bringing this in. We'll skew this a little bit, a couple different ways. And again, like in Photoshop, you can get a lot cleaner. You can get perfect circles every single time, or excuse me, perfect squares. I guess if you wanted a circle, you could do that too. But just a quick couple adjustments. Again, I'm going to pretend that Kelsey isn't here looking at submissions. I'm going to crop my fingers out.
And a lot of these tricks are good for social media posts too. Don't forget about that.
Yeah.
Because that's another important part of your practice. We will actually be having a Zoom workshop where someone is going to talk about the importance of social media for visual artists and authors as well.
Yeah. So now that I got it cropped in, I kind of took the matting out as well. So Kelsey, I'm sorry. But then we're going to go in, and because this is behind glass, photographs tend to lose a little bit. So we're going to bring up the black point, which is just adding a little more black into it. We'll just bring the brightness down a little bit, kind of skewing it more towards that darkness. And, I would say that's pretty close to the original. Here's where we started. And again, within a minute, we're there. No extra tools, everything that came with our phones. So again, this is just to reiterate, our phones are incredibly powerful for a lot of things, but photography especially. It's very easy to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment for stuff you're never going to use really. You know, if you're shooting action sports, this is not the tool for you, but 90% of what you're ever going to want to take a picture of, this is a powerful tool that, you know, for a lot of, we're all going to have phones, so it is, you know, in some ways a free camera that is as good as anything.
And someone asked, what are we losing when we're using that much skew?
So it depends. You always kind of have to keep an eye on it. Usually, I will say this, because I've used this a lot in my time here. I have never skewed anything enough to where it is a noticeable difference. There's a lot of leeway in the way the pixels work, especially if it is so skewed to begin with in one direction. If you took kind of a, here, let me see if I can show this.
And just while you're showing that, someone did ask me about, again, to reiterate this whole having two photos, one with a detail and one best to show the frame and all. That's definitely what I recommend.
Yeah,
it really emphasizes what it's looking like in like a closer, because what do you do when you go to a gallery? You immediately get close to something. So
yeah. So to get to the skew point, so like this photo that we took earlier, head on, you know, more or less perfectly square on all sides. When you skew this, you notice it right away. So because we're taking a square object and skewing it, because essentially what you're doing is you're taking the two outsides or the two corners and adjusting them in relation to the corners on the other side. It really messes with things, except if this is not a great way to explain this at all. If those 2 corner points are off to begin with, and you're just squaring them up with the points that already exist, you have a lot more leeway. So in a photo like this, well, this one, as you skew, because these, yeah, let me see if I can draw on this, if that'll help. Because, well, that is just the tiniest little marker, isn't it? So is that. Okay, I'm not going to use a marker. But if you look at the corners on the right side, because they're so drastically different than in relation to the corners on the left, you have a lot more leeway to skew and square, because ultimately that's what you're trying to do, is get it to a squared position. So you kind of just have to keep an eye out on it and see how far you can go without it actually messing with it too much. So like going in the opposite direction, that you can tell the bottom right of the mat or of the image is starting to pull out a little further than it should. So, you know, that's obviously too far. But if you go, you know, just eyeballing it right there is okay.
and I highly recommend just playing with these settings.
Absolutely.
You know, now that this is fresh in your mind, maybe tomorrow set this up and try it. Even if it's not your own work, just photograph something in your house and try to use these tips and tricks, because the more comfortable you become with these tools, the quicker and easier, and just you won't have to worry as much when you're going to submit if you do this often, or just do it a few times. Take some notes for yourself. Notes are always good.
Yeah.
And someone, also, we had a comment, Travis, that someone said that was a perfect answer to the skew loss, so thank you.
Oh, all right. I
Uh,
got there eventually.
yeah. Someone did ask about that they shake a lot while taking pictures. Is there a way to help with that? And one way I would recommend is for like $12, you can go to like Best Buy or Walmart, and there's kind of like these clip-on selfie sticks that you can clip to a table. And you can, a selfie stick kind of, it just holds your phone like it's like this. It's basically, they've reinvented the tripod is basically what's happened. It's like this, and then your phone sits in there, it clamps on, and then you have, it's connected to like a little thing, and you just clamp it to your table, clamps on your table, and then you can just be hitting the button to hit the like shutter rather than like holding it. It's already being held and you're just clicking it. So I'd highly recommend that if you're quite shaky.
Yeah, tripods always help. Um,
And that's like the
they, you know,
cheaper tripod version.
yeah. And that is actually a much easier way to finally adjust your relationship to the picture that you're trying to shoot. Because you can tilt up and down. So you can try to it's easier to get parallel to the surface if the like if your painting is hanging on a wire, so it's the top is hanging off the wall slightly. That gets kind of tricky because you have to kind of crouch down but hold your phone up to try to get that parallel surface that you really want. So a tripod really helps with that.
Yeah.
And
And
like
you
Kelsey said,
don't,
they're cheap.
yeah,
I
you
mean, they're
don't need
next
to
to
go
nothing.
out and buy a full, like, I don't know, like one of these mega tripods that costs like 200 or more. There are just cheap ones for like, $10 to $15 that you can get. I've seen them at Best Buy in New Hartford, or Target has them. And I also saw another question about kind of tools as well. Someone asked, Travis, do you have experience with polarized lighting and lenses?
Sort of. I haven't used them in a long time. Um, the I found that the time to you really need polarized is when you're shooting around water. That helps cut off some of the glare coming off. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I don't really worry about it.
Yeah, and like we were saying, and we're trying to just make like to be comfortable with your phone, because your phone is going to do a majority of what needs to be done.
Yeah, and there are lenses that you can buy for your phones that clip on. I've never used them. I know I I don't know about because they range from $50 to I've seen some that are, basically the price of an actual lens on a DSLR. So you're talking $1,000 plus. I would assume that those work a little better than the cheap ones, but I don't really have any experience in those. And I know they also make covers, polarized covers, UV covers, neutral density covers for your cell phone. But again, if you're shooting in a controlled environment, um, I I don't know if there's really a need for them.
Okay, I'm just gonna have a quick look to see if there's any other. Someone asked, how bad is it to have glare on the frame? It's probably one of the bigger issues that we see coming in for entries. So I'd really try to avoid it. Don't panic and think that like anything you've ever submitted with a glare is the worst possible thing. It's just now that technology is moving forward and we have these things in our pocket, and also there are just simple tricks. I think there's becoming a standard of just knowing that you can fix those things pretty easily. And it just
I
shows
will,
a certain level of professionalism.
and I would say if you're going to have glare, have it be on the mat and the frame as opposed to the image. If you have to have it, try as hard as you can to get it off of the actual work.
Yeah, that's a good point. You really, like we were talking about, you know, showing the frame and not showing the frame. The most important thing at the end of it is that the actual work looks good. That's the most important thing and looks true to life. Okay, any other thoughts you want to share, Travis?
Not really. Hi, Aaron. My sister's on this, so that's kind of neat.
Yeah, I recognized a few names too, so it's nice to know we got people here for us.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I covered everything. I guess my last thing is just, you know, like Kelsey was saying, pick up your camera, take some photos, play with some light, grab a lamp, put it next to somebody's face, take some pictures. You can get some really, really cool images with not much. I know we all have seen photo shoots where they have 16 different lights hanging from, you know, 25-foot rafters and all of this stuff that makes it look really intimidating. But ultimately, it's just physics. It's light bouncing off of surfaces. So if you can figure out how to, and this is kind of getting away from photographing like 2D, this kind of gets into 3D and just general photography. But if you can figure out what light is doing, then you can get some really great images consistently. So, and the best way to do it, just start playing.
Yeah, and I did have a question about, will these be available on YouTube? They will. Travis is actually the person that puts them up there for us. So he'll be doing that. And if you go to where you've registered, if you click that registration link, it will take you to the video again. We have had a couple issues where Macs, so Safari is sometimes not working on that link. So we recommend just opening Google Chrome. That's the correct one, right?
Yeah, that one seems to be working consistently.
Yeah, so if you run into that, just try a different browser.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah,
then,
but they all will be on YouTube. So if you're getting stuck on a one of these webinars and it's asking for a passcode that you don't have, that we also don't have, we're not really sure why it's happening. They will all be on YouTube. So if you go either to our website and click on the link, that's where the links will take you eventually. But you'll be able to find them all on our YouTube channel anyway. So.
and we still do have 3 more weeks of these updating your professional practice webinars. We hope you can join us for some more. Next week, we have hanging, installation, and framing, which will be me and Diane Davis. Diane's on our visual arts committee and is always volunteering her time because she is a wonderful person at View to have. She's an excellent installer, and me and her have discussed at length the common issues we see with framing and installation. So we're going to talk about those and how to fix those and improve your practice. And then on the 25th, I'll be talking about writing artist statements, and I'll just go through kind of how to structure a statement and some do's and don'ts and how to talk about work. And then the last one will be with Susan Cox, who is also on our visual arts committee and is a glass artist. And we will be talking about shipping and packaging. And we'll go through how to do framed work up and all the way up to how to do 3-dimensional work and glass work. So we'll go from your standard framed work to very fragile sculpture. So that will then wrap up our updating your professional practice webinars, and we hope you can join us for those last 3. I've really enjoyed having Travis here and showing us all these tricks. Thank you.
Yeah, hang on. I just realized we skipped a question
Okay.
about the pastel wall.
Oh, I did answer it in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah, I would just say, as long as it's not too distracting and takes away from the piece, then shoot away.
Yep. So that's, and also it depends on your use, but maybe for social media that like slight, having that color in there will make a photo pop more on social media. And
For sure.
the only other question I saw right now was the 0.5, 1x and 0.3 point settings and how you get to it.
Yeah, hang on, let me pull this back up real quick.
And when you're pulling that up, someone said they have several darkish tabletop 3D pieces and it's hard to get detail in their photos. I just recommend using a white background then.
Yeah.
You want the contrast. So if you have a white piece of work, you probably want a black backdrop and vice versa. So that's how I would recommend solving that issue.
Yeah, the only reason I had the black tablecloth out earlier was because that was the one that was on the first hanger when I grabbed it. It probably wasn't great for that piece, that bust, because it was a little darker, but it kind of helped with the using that light on the front to try to capture some of those details and have it kind of wash out as you go back.
And it was dramatic, so it depends what look
Yeah.
you're going for.
Yeah, okay, so these zooms are right above the photo button or the photo icon. The 0.5, the 1, and the 3. So anytime you open your camera app, those should be at the bottom. And when you pinch zoom, you'll notice that it will start zooming in and have different numbers down there. That's because it's in between those lenses. So the way that these cameras work is it will click on to, like if I go to 0.5, let's say, it clicks to the 0.5 lens and then just starts, hang on, I lost you again. I don't think we have the greatest service down here in the gallery.
I know that to be true.
Yeah. Well, you got to focus on the art down here. Don't want to be on your phone. But so if you're here at 0.5 and as you start going, it's just zooming in on that original image until you get to the point where it'll switch over to that 1. So if you look, you can actually see a slight differentiation when you go from 0.9 to 1. And again, when you go from, let's see, 2.9 to 3. But that's because it's literally jumping to a new lens. So that's why I just suggest go with the lens because it's going to be its clearest at whatever it's designed to do. So yeah, I would stick with those.
Thank you for answering that last question. I think that's going to wrap up our session tonight. And again, please join us next week at Thursday at 7 p.m. All of them are at 7 p.m. on a Thursday. And we look forward to introducing you to more tricks in the future.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.